the real, raw, honest conversations about parenting teenagers in today's world. No filters, no sugarcoating, just truth, compassion, and practical insight from experts, educators, and parents who are right in the trenches alongside you. This podcast is where parents come to hear the conversations they didn't even know they needed. My mission is simple: to help you feel supported, informed, and empowered so you can build the connection with your teen that you truly want. If you want to go deeper into this work with me, stay until the end, and I will share how you can connect with me. From my heart to yours, thank you for being here, for doing the hard work of parenting, and for choosing to grow right alongside your teen. Welcome to another episode of Parenting Teens Advice Redefined for today's world, where we have the real and raw and honest conversations you didn't even know you needed. And remember, it's not them, it's you. And that's where the magic happens. Today's conversation might surprise you, but it's one every parent needs to hear. I am joined by Patrick Hardy, also known as Disaster Patrick. And no, this is not about fear and worst case scenarios. This is about how we raise our teens who don't fall apart when life gets hard, who know how to think, adapt, and lead, even in the moments of uncertainty. With over 20 years of real-world experience, from evacuating hundreds of animals in minutes, that's something that's touched my heart, to redefining what preparedness actually looks like. Patrick brings a perspective that goes far beyond disaster prep. Because what if preparing for the unexpected is actually about raising a teen who trusts themselves no matter what? Patrick Hardy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation today.
So am I. It's not one that I've had in 160 episodes. So this is very cool for me too. And I just want to start off with first of all, Patrick, what's your story? What's your mission? What is the point of all of this?
My mission is that I believe that no one should ever have to experience a disaster in their entire life. I don't believe you have to do that. I believe that if we sort of allocate these sort of really great tools and we assert ourselves and empower the people around us, that disasters don't become disasters at all. Disasters become opportunities for us to become stronger, become more successful, and using them as a lesson point. So we talk about teens, and that's pretty much where my career in emergency management started. It's very surreptitious, really. I was a lifeguard in high school, and when I loved doing it. It was a lot of fun, and a lot of the lifeguards said, you know, we're going to become EMTs, so I became an EMT. A lot of the EMTs said we're going to become a medic, so I became a medic. And then I went to college, and I was studying political science. And when you study international political science, which is what I studied, and I wanted to become a professor, believe it or not. And when you study international political science, everybody has a cause. Everybody has something that they believe in. Everything, some challenge, some cause, something that is near and dear to them that they feel like they are going to attack in their career. And the traditional ones, like abolishing nuclear weapons or stopping world hunger, things like that. Those are things I didn't feel like I could make much of an impact on. But when I saw the levees in New Orleans in 2005 suddenly crest, I said, that's it. That's what I'm going to spend my career doing. So I merged my vocational passions of emergency response and being a first responder with my academic background in political science, and I melded them together. And I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter to the governor of Louisiana. I said, listen, I'm a nobody. I'm a complete nobody. I graduated top of my class in all of my majors. I had 4 majors, and I graduated top of my class in all of them. But I said, I don't have any political connections. I don't know anybody, but I want to be a great emergency manager, and I would love to come down because right now it is clearly a seminal moment in emergency management. And I want to be a firsthand witness to that. So 2 days later, I get a phone call. She says, come on down. And I ended up working as a consultant. And then I went overseas. I got a graduate degree in England And then I came back and I opened a small business disaster company, and I built that into the largest small business disaster company ever. And I did rotations as the national private sector representative to FEMA. I got appointed to that position by President Obama. I did a lot of really great things. And so now I sit on the UN's public-private partnership. I represent U.S. private business to the UN. And also I sit on the FBI's public-private partnership as well. And I essentially I've been a Fortune 500 consultant. I work with lots of different kinds of people, restaurants and bars and nursing homes and alligator farms. And finally, I work with an awful lot of families. So I work with families, I work with schools, and I try to talk about how to empower their teens, much like I felt empowered when I first started.
That's incredible. Wow, what a story. And before we even start, I would love for you to, because if parents are listening going, well, I'm not expecting a bomb to go off, so I don't need to hear. Define disaster for us.
I define disaster very broadly. The way that I define disaster is this. It's anything that occurs, a disruption to your life that makes you weaker afterwards. Oh. And that sounds pretty broad. But what I say to people is that if an incident, if a disruption in your life, whether it is a natural disruption, a hurricane, a tornado, an earthquake, an attack of honeybees, anything like that. If it's a technological disaster, like a power outage, transportation accident, anything along those lines, and then a security emergency. So things we think about, acts of war, acts of terrorism, shootings and things like that. But then the other one I talk about is personal disruptions as well. Like, for example, I talk to business audiences about AI. And the first thing I tell them is I say, when they ask me to help them conceptualize AI, and I say, it's a disruption to your business. But it's up to you whether that disruption makes your company stronger or whether it makes it weaker, because it is a choice. It's not a panacea. I've been using AI myself for many months, and it's a decision point. And whether or not you allow that to empower you to be better will ultimately determine whether it's a disaster at all. Because if you have a disruption to your life that you're able to turn around and say, I was able to utilize these tools, I responded to the disaster properly, I recovered, and I was actually able to reverse the disaster. The question I pose to people is, if you were able to reverse that disaster from something that made you weaker to something that made you stronger, the question I pose to you is, was that really a disaster at all?
Ooh, this is slam. And I say this because when I think disaster in the education system, I'm thinking, tragic school events, and then I'm thinking, well, okay, failure, bullying, fights, and then I'll spill a cup of bleach on my floor and use the same words. Oh my God, I created a disaster. So I love that you think broadly about this, and I'd love to obviously launch into preparedness for disaster. And I feel like a lot of parents might feel like and act like preparedness is all about protection and control. What do you think about that?
It's the opposite. It's absolutely the opposite.
More.
When I talk to teens, when I go to schools all the time. In fact, this fall, I'm doing something really fun, which we'll talk about in a little while, is when I go to schools, I sit with teens, I sit with them in these big high school gyms. I turn to them and say, who do you think's in charge if there's a disaster? I want you to point to that person right now. Who do you think's in charge? So we have an earthquake. We're at school. We have an earthquake. Who do you think's in charge? And they'll always start pointing to who? The principals, the teachers. And I always say, it's not them. It's you.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
That's the change. Yeah. And it's more than just simply telling them you're responsible, you have to do it yourself. Instead, what the way that I word it and the way that I talk to education administrators about this is talk to them about how it's an element of trust. Mm-hmm. You are trusting them because you believe they have the ability to to do this on your own. And I know a lot of you seem skeptical, but what happens is I actually started with this when I used to train EMTs. Okay. So when I was first, when I was a medic for a long time. And then when I was still young in my career, I wasn't making a whole lot of money. So I went back to my old EMT school and said, hey, listen, can I teach a little bit, make a couple of bucks on the side? They said, absolutely. And I trained them because I was an expert in hazardous materials, weapons of mass destruction, and mass casualty incidents. So I used to do the lessons the other instructors didn't like doing. It always happened at the end of the semester. The teachers were tired because they were prepping them for their EMT exams. So I thought, great, I'm fresh. I'll do it. And these EMTs, they're 18. They're 19. These are people who are babies, really. They've never seen their biggest concern prior to being in this class was, who am I going to take to prom? How am I going to pass my final exam? When they're here, I turn them and I say, listen, if there's a mass casualty incident, guess who's in charge, folks? You are in charge. And so what I'll do is that they'll say skeptical, yeah, the firemen will handle it. No, if you roll up on scene and no one else is there, it's you. And so what I'll do is, I used to do this all the time. I used to take 50 or 60 teddy bears. I used to buy them on Amazon. I had them all out. And I used to put index cards around the necks of each of the teddy bears. And I put them in a room and I would turn all the lights off. And I would say to the EMTs, okay, here's a scene that's rolling up. And on those note cards had 4 distinct pieces of information that they had to know as an EMT. It's called the triage system. Doesn't matter. And I would put them in the room and I would take maybe 6 of them, maybe 6 EMTs. These are all students. And I would say, this is your scene. And I would flip the light on and I would have them walking into this room and I would say, no one else is coming. It's totally on you. And the first time that they would do it, they were flustered. They didn't know what to do. They were thinking someone else will handle it. And I would say, no, we're going to stop. I'd pull them out, turn the lights back off, switch the note cards up and say, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. And they would ask me, why would you do that? And I said, because in the end, I don't care about the teddy bears. I don't care about that. What I care about is you realizing that when you're in the back of that rig by yourself, because you're going to have your partner's going to be driving, when you're back there, it's you. It's on you. No one else is there. I'm not there. The instructor's not there. A doctor's not there. A nurse isn't there. So it's up to you to handle it. So I have to train you in a very short period of time how to feel empowered to do this on your own, because in the end, what happens in the back of that rig is ultimately up to you. Is that client, is that patient success going to be dependent on you? The answer is yes.
Wow. What comes to me as soon as you say that it's on you is, if we already know going into something that it's on us, that no one's coming, you are rewiring your brain automatically into, I can't look anywhere else. It has to come from inside me. And I think the trust in yourself is just incredible. I say that even to parents who are helicopter parents and fixing things for kids, is of all the things you're not teaching them, what you are teaching them is, I have no faith in you to fix this. I have no faith in you to do this. So I love that you said that. You talk about personal leadership, like personal leadership in crisis. What does that look like? Not as a medic. What does it look like for a 15-year-old in a regular day? You know what I mean? Like their own personal, their perception of disaster. What does that look like for them to take on this personal crisis leadership?
I turn to everybody, every single person that I work with, and I say, I don't want you to write a disaster plan. Period. I don't want you to write a plan at all. And everybody gets shocked because that is the advice that they hear all the time. And I say, don't write one. Why would you write one? A, you're not going to write it. B, you're not going to remember it. C, you're not going to update it. D, you're never going to practice it. So why in the world have it? So instead, what I say to each teenager is I say, I want you to have your own backpack, your own disaster backpack, not the one you bought at Walmart, Not the one you buy online on Amazon that everybody's talking about. Not the one that, and you've seen these ads sometimes on YouTube where it says, this is the backpack the military uses or the Navy SEALs use. And I've bought every one of those backpacks, by the way. I think I have 175 different backpacks I've bought. I bought the Navy SEAL ones, the military ones they talk about. They're mostly junk. What I say to teenagers is I say, listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to find a backpack that you like. Just the backpack, nothing inside, just the backpack on the outside. What is it? What does it feel comfortable? I want you to make it feel comfortable on your back. You like it. It's your colors. It's what you want, your style. Once you've done that, now I'm going to guide you to fill it. And I'm going to aggregate that disaster plan with the items we put in the backpack. So in other words, I'm going to replicate everything you would have done in a disaster plan using only objects you're going to purchase. And so I walk them through that step by step. I have a method I call the 5-pocket method. And that method is what I use for determining what do they want in there. I'll give an example. One of the things that I think is neglected so often in disaster backpacks, it's neglected constantly, is the psychological element. And so one of the things I tell teenagers, jokingly so, but I mean it really, if you have a disaster, one of the things that needs to go in your disaster backpack is your Nintendo Switch. I want your portable game system to go into your backpack. And sometimes parents say, why would you want them to do that? And I say, because it's up to them to entertain themselves. They need a moment to get away from things. But the point is not the gadget. It's not any of that stuff. It's that the fact that we realize they can't rely on you. They're not going to rely on other people to self-soothe in a disaster. If playing a little video game from time to time makes them feel better, then that is a critical disaster supply. So when I talk to teenagers, I say, everywhere you go, have enough on you to get to the next anchor point. So whether you're at school, should you have enough on you in your 5 pockets to get home, to get to your parents' workplace, to get to the coffee shop, wherever. And so I help them to design that. But here's the key. Cheryl, is I tell them, your parents don't get to dictate what goes in that backpack.
Yes.
Only you.
Bomb.
And so we put that together. Then you see how that not only just me lecturing in front of them, you're in charge of your own disaster response. They roll their eyes. Yeah, right. And then the reality is I say, you know how I'm going to prove that to you? We're going to fill it. And actually, I'm not going to fill it. You're going to fill it. And I'm going to guide you. I'm going to ask the right questions, and you are going to provide the answers for yourself. And that's how I develop it, because then I gain that trust for them, and I give them a chance to actually customize that backpack directly. In fact, it's something we're actually launching on my website in just a few months, where we're actually going to, they actually can go step by step. Those questions I always ask, they'll actually be able to do it on the website and purchase a customized backpack. But that's the reason why, is because I want people to understand they have to create their own backpacks.
Wow. Can you give us an example of the other 4 pockets?
Absolutely. So the 5 pockets are physical, psychological, personal, papers, and phone. So with physical, it's the usual stuff, but actually, I'll give you a quick example. There's a lot of different things I talk about on the physical side, but one of the things I say is you should always have 3 different kinds of flashlights. You should have a flashlight you carry. You should have a flashlight that is wearable. So like a miner's flashlight up here, because you should be able to do things and the light should follow you, because there's nothing worse. I tell people this all the time. If you don't believe me about wearing a miner's light, I want you to try to do dishes in the pitch black. Try to do dishes and then have like one hand flashlight and try to do dishes at the same time. That's one of the most frustrating things imaginable. Mm-hmm. And the last thing is to have a kind of flashlight that it's called a camping light or a camping lantern, where you open it up like that and it illuminates an immediate area. So those are the 3 kind of flashlights you have to have. So that's one example of physical, psychological we talked about. And then personal, here's what I say. Get keys. The keys to everywhere you would want to evacuate to. Grandma's house, your own home, a friend's house, whatever, your uncle's house. Have the key in there. So instead of writing in there, we all go to Uncle Joe's house or Aunt Jane's house. No, have the key in there. That's how you know you've been given permission to go in there and you have the ability. You should have the security code to get in their house. I mean, whatever. You have to have all that stuff. But you aggregate those things personally. The other thing, just real quick, is in personal things like glasses, batteries, things like that. And it'll all be dependent on what we choose in the other sections. And then for papers, here's what I always tell teens. I tell everybody all the time. Always have an ID on you. And maybe an expired driver's license. A lot of teenagers don't have expired driver's licenses yet, but like I tell them, have some identification in there of some kind, even a library card. I know it sounds weird, but I know we don't have that stuff a lot anymore. But there is identification that you can get, even a student ID. Yeah, throw a student ID in there. And then for phone, this is what I always say to teenagers: always, always, always have a separate charger that goes into that backpack, so that, a car charger, or, something that is a backup for you, so you can always have your phone charged. Because let's be real, in a disaster, you're going to use your phone. Anyone who says, don't worry about your phone, that person needs a little more seasoning in disaster management, because frankly, that's just the way of the world. So people are going to use their phones. So I always say, have a backpack. So you go to the physical, the psychological, the personal, the papers, and the phone. And that is the foundation for not only your backpack, but your entire disaster preparedness program.
Wow. I'm going to go, wasn't going to go down this path, but I have to now, because my jam is autism, kids with autism, and helping, supporting parents in that. And I'm just thinking, any kid who has autism, who can, sometimes we fixate on something happening, on being prepared, oh my God, this is fantastic. Like, what a resource to, leave your kid into high school who's always worried about getting dropped off the front door. Mom, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if you're set? You packed it. It's going to make you feel better, make you feel safe, get you places. Oh, I just love this. This is like gold. Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. And thank you for letting me go sideways with that. So parents are listening and they are going, I have no idea if my kid would freeze under pressure or not. Like, what are the early signs where parents are going, oh, we really need to talk about this. We need to tap into Patrick. Like, what are they looking for?
What I do all the time is I say to teenagers, look, here's what we're going to do. And I do this usually at schools, right? So this is what I'll do. And I love, as a matter of fact, I should tell a little bit of backstory. I go back, there are 6 generations of educators in my family. So my mother was a teacher and a principal. My grandmother was, my great-grandmother, going all the way back to as one-room schoolhouse in a place called Slayton, Minnesota in 1862. Tells you how long. Wild. So and I was even a substitute teacher for a little while, because when I left, when I was still trying to get my to sort of work my way up in emergency management, I wasn't making enough money where I lived, and so I would do substitute teaching on the sides. So my mother said, "Well, you're an educator," and I said, "There you have it."
And disaster could be.
and disaster, and I used to do that all the time. As a matter of fact, I used to go in there, and the principals, because actually I really enjoy teaching. I almost wish I could be a teacher, because I enjoy talking with people, because I have a great intellectual curiosity, I like to think. So like, I'll go into a world history class and, I'll talk about, things that happened with the ancient Egyptians, or we'll talk about the, the Carolingian dynasty or something. And it's just really fun. I enjoy engaging kids in that way. It's a lot of fun. But what happens is now is that as I went to my mom's school, and my mother was a very able administrator, extremely able. She knew exactly how to maintain control, but everybody loved her, because she, when kids wouldn't show up to school, she drove to their house to pick them up, because she knew about their families. Their families were involved in gangs, or they were negligent parents, or their parents were in jail. So my mom would just go, and she'd just pull up in her Mercedes, and she said, this 8-year-old would come bounding out of the house. They would want her to go to school. They just didn't go to school because their parents were in jail or whatever. So my mother loved being with kids, loved it. Incredible. And so when my mother was going to create her disaster plan, who'd she call? her wayward son. And so I said, absolutely, I will do that for you. And here's what I did. I ran a disaster drill because I just wanted to test the waters and see how, because my mom was extolling, we're great. We know what we're doing. We're this, we're that. I said, fine. So here's what we're going to do, Mom. We're going to run the drill my way. And so what I did was I gave each of the teachers a white envelope. Okay. And then there was a message. Okay. And sometimes the message would say things like, when the disaster occurs, I want you to have a panic attack. Stay under your desk and refuse to leave the classroom for any reason. Or it'll say things like, you've been hit in the head with a television, so lay out and pretend to be unconscious. Or, run out before the kids and refuse to talk with them. And so I did that, and the teachers were aghast that I would have them do that. And I had them open it up the minute the drill rang. I would literally say, everybody, the drill has started. Please open your white envelopes. Take a minute to read it. Don't tell anyone what it says. And they would read it, and I'd say, okay, do what is ever on the card. The drill starts now. Then the kids are now, whoa, what's going on here? The teacher can't do anything. The teacher's under the desk. So you know what that forces the kids to do? They have to act on their own. They have to do that on their own. And so what I did was that drill was a complete mess, as it should be. That's what I wanted to have happen. Because once that happened, I then went into, and I had a big assembly, and then I would go to each of the classrooms, and I was talking to the kids and saying, look, in the end, I want you guys to know it's not the teacher's responsibility. It is your responsibility to grab that roll sheet. It is your responsibility to grab that red backpack. Period. That is your responsibility. And when they realize that, all of a sudden, their behavior changes because I have now invested them in the process. They're not just lemmings of being told what to do. You go here, which teenagers just love being told what to do.
It's the best thing ever.
I remember being a teenager and I love being told what to do, and with no small hint of sarcasm. But what I tell them is I say, I'm going to do this where the teachers aren't involved and you have to activate things on their own. Then you know what happens, Cheryl? Instantly, things change. Instantly, they realize that they are in charge and they have to do it. So what I tell parents is take that identical philosophy when they are at home. And if you're talking seriously about disasters, that really is something you are worried about, and that's really something you want to talk with them about, then turn to them and say, you're responsible for it. I'm going to empower you and entrust you, and let me show you how.
Oh my God.
Once you do that, you can imagine the changes in the behavior that you are going to see. It's going to be incredible. So that's why I do it the way I do, because once you put them in charge, now you don't have to force them. They want to be in charge.
Yeah, I feel it viscerally when you said that. Like I just can get right into being in that house. Like that's amazing. What a great plan. So now, if parents want to build resiliency in their teens and preparedness, but how do they do that without creating fear base? Like, how do they do it without creating an anxiety? Because I can imagine them going, oh, I'm going to scare the shit out of my kid. My house is never going to go on fire, like ever.
Change the vocabulary.
Okay.
But I want them to change the vocabulary because I don't do doom and gloom. And I've been a disaster guy for 20 years. I've worked with big companies. I work with big corporations, Fortune 500 companies. I've worked in Silicon Valley. I've worked big pharma. I've worked with petrochemical. I've worked with community theaters. I've worked with small businesses. I've worked with very, very wealthy families where you have kids who are in boarding schools in Switzerland and New York. I mean, I worked with a family that was actually at Phillips Exeter Academy, which is probably the premier high school in the United States. It regularly feeds people in the Ivy Leagues. And one of the things I say to them is I say, even then, we have to change the vocabulary because fear doesn't work. Why scare people? Instead, why don't we take this as an opportunity to use their disaster preparedness as a tool to make them feel like, hey, we trust you more. Instead of, because that's what I think as parents that we try and do, right? We're trying to ultimately show our teens, we're not trying to fight them on everything. We want them to have the negligent amount or the amount of freedom that they need to grow. Without putting them in a position where they're endangering themselves, they're endangering others, and or if they're in a position, where they're misbehaving or whatever. We want it to, and that's a hard balance to find. It's very, very hard. But when it comes to disaster planning, it's easy. So why don't you just take this as a simple win? Is to tell them, I trust you, because in a disaster, I hate to tell you this, for those folks of you who are sort of still skeptical, they are on their own. I hate to tell you that. I've been doing this now for 20 years. During earthquakes, for instance, I live in California, we get earthquakes here. And when we have earthquakes, if something happens during the school day and there's a massive earthquake, they might as well be on Bangkok because A, you're not going to the school. Even if you run onto campus after what happened in Texas, they will now no longer allow parents to run on campus and grab kids. Parents have now been arrested for that. And there's a reason for it.
Of course.
There's a reason for it. Because kids have been taken, kids have been kidnapped before because they say, I'm their parent, I will do whatever. And the kid goes, I'm not going with you. And they say, I don't care, you're going with me. And they just think it's just they're stressed out in the disaster and they'll kidnap or custodial interference issues too. So that's why instead I turn to them and I say, you're in a position where you have enough cognizance as an adult that you can make your own decisions to protect yourself if I give you the tools, if I give you the thought process. But if you make it doom and gloom, you know what is going to happen? They're going to be terrified.
Yeah.
They're going to be terrified. There's no reason to be terrified. Just like when I train new EMTs, I say, listen to these folks. Listen, folks, when you roll up on scene, don't get intimidated. If you see blood or gore or whatever, I don't want you to focus on the first thing. We do airway first, then heartbeat, then it's a process. And I'm telling you that only because when I do disasters, it's the same thing. This is the process I show to everybody. When there's a disaster, and this is for adults too, I say, if there's a disaster, don't think about what's going on. Think about make one decision and one decision only. Evacuate, shelter in place, or lockdown, and then pull out your backpack and do it. And that's what I empower people to do, because then people start making decisions. But if we make it seem insurmountable, just like if you were to tell them any goal, oh, I want to be an Olympian. Well, it's going to take years and you're going to get injured and you have to deal with this. That's going to make them feel like it's impossible. Yeah. Instead of encouraging them, saying, we can do it. We're going to do it one step at a time. And that's how we do it with disasters, one step at a time, because adults get just as afraid as teens do and just as children do. So we have to put them in a position where they feel like I have a system, I have a way of dealing with this, no matter what chaos is going on around me.
I feel like the follow-up conversation to that too is if you're doing this disaster practice at home and putting your kids in that situation, you're going to be able to draw on this when something is like not the disaster anymore. Oh, I'm going to fail my test, or I didn't make the soccer team. Well, you just did this disaster and you were great. Like, you can handle anything. You handle that, you can handle anything. I just feel like you're giving yourself such a powerful resource for your kids and for yourself, because once you see your kid can handle it, I guess I should have a little more faith in him or her. So I love that. I would love to ask, how are parents unintentionally removing the opportunities for like building the real world capacity? How are they taking that away from them? Never on purpose, but unintentionally. What can we look for saying, I do that, maybe I should stop?
They buy emergency backpacks, quote unquote, for the family, or they create bins, quote unquote, for the family. I turn to everybody and I say, that's not your backpack. Period. That is not your backpack. It's not, it's the family's. No, I don't want to hear about the family's backpack. I'm not interested in the family's disaster kits. What I'm interested in is, what is your disaster kit? What is the one that you have customized? Because this is just common to human nature. If you have no skin in the game, if you have no investment in it, you're never going to do it. Because I do this with business owners all the time. I have this conversation constantly with them. And this very much applies to teens before you ask. Because I work with a lot of pizzerias. I actually work with a very large pizza chain. I can't unfortunately say which one, but it is a massive, massive chain. And we do a lot of trainings. And guess who is in the room? Teenagers who work there, who think I am just in this thing because I have to be. I don't really want to be here. And I'll turn to them and say, listen, if there's a disaster, we're expecting you to do this, this, and this. You have to do these things. If you don't do them, no one will. No one will. Soon as I tell them that, they instantly realize they are invested. And so then I'll do this at the end. I have a lot of fun. I do this with adults all the time too, but teens are great because I love, this is going to be a great drill. And I've done this constantly. I'll have a small business, okay? And there'll be, 10, 15, 20 employees, whatever. And we're about to run a drill, and I'll put the teenager in charge. Okay, all right, this is the person who's in charge of the disaster response for the small business. Here's the disaster plan for the business, and the teen is going to be in charge. Everybody else do exactly what he says, to the letter. And so the teenager, they're more shocked than the employers, the other employees, because they didn't realize they were going to be given so much responsibility. But now, do you see how I've done that, Cheryl? Is that I've now forced the teenager to say, I am trusting you to run this thing, and I'm doing it in front of your bosses so that they understand we're not fooling around here. Because in earthquakes, bosses may not be around. In wildfires, bosses may not be around. So we have to have people who say, I can at least start doing things in this disaster response, even when the responsible folks aren't around. Because then they have an investment in the culture. They have an investment in learning the disaster response instead of saying everything's going to be awful. And oh, by the way, boss so-and-so is going to be in charge. How does that help anybody feel empowered about the disaster program? That wouldn't make me feel good about the disaster program, and I'm a disaster guy. So when I when I work with small businesses and families and things, I say you need to actually put the rubber on the road. You need to let them be in the response, give them something integral to do. Once you have done that, then you have done something really incredible. You've empowered them in the situation that they never felt like they have ever been empowered in before.
Wow. Oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay, so I want to talk about then is what has come to me is when I was in the high school, I was crisis management all the time. And at the end of the crisis, sometimes it was nonverbal, kids just having, a bit of a struggle. And it could be very violent and could feel very intimidating. And there was always the importance for me to debrief the staff involved. Is there a debriefing for your process after the disaster happens, after the backpacks are unpacked, after all of it? Is there an importance or a validation to have a debriefing after the disaster?
After every disaster response I've been ever part of, including the one you were talking about in the beginning about how I evacuated tons of cats. I'll kind of give people a bit of the backstory there. Yeah. I evacuated 240 cats.
Oh my God.
In 90 minutes. Okay. And I did that at a cat sanctuary. I had a small team of people, but I developed the world's first methodology for mass evacuating cats in a very short period of time. And when that was done, when we finished that drill, I debriefed everybody. And here's how I do it. I asked the same two questions, and you are free to steal these. I use these all the time. I developed it, and this is what I use, but you're free to use it as well. I want you to say these exact two questions. Don't paraphrase. Don't try to change it. Do it exactly the way I asked the questions. What did we do well? And notice I used the word we. What did we do well? Mm-hmm. What do we need to work on? Not where did we fail? Where do we suck? Things like that. You suck. And then here's the rule. No proper names may be used except in praise.
Ooh, so good.
So I say that because for obvious things, if we need to work on something, then nobody feels like they're being pointed out. John Doe is 15. He sucks at this. And I totally understand why he sucked. How's it going to make him feel? This is going to make him feel like he never wants to touch the disaster plan again. I wouldn't want to do it either.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But if I praise him, as I say, we made a mistake on communication. We need to work on that. As a matter of fact, when I actually do drills, I actually mean this. I'm not making this up. When actually I go in front of large groups, especially when drills don't go well, I stand up in front and say, hi, everybody. Okay, here's the thing. First of all, everybody give yourselves a round of applause. And they do. And then I say, here's the thing. I can see a lot of long faces today. Here's the deal. In the end, no one in here did a bad job but me, because I'm the emergency professional. It's my responsibility. So if you feel like you did something wrong, you didn't. I did. So put it on me. You're free to write my name and scribble my name on the bathroom walls if you want to, but don't blame anyone else. It's on me. I'm there to empower you. I'm there to train you. I'm there to put you in the right position. So blame me. Now, when there's something that we need to work on together, okay, that gives me a tool as a disaster professional. You see how I've eaten all that? Now I take it all. I take everything. And by doing that, I then take the pressure off each other. But then you know what I end up doing for the rest of the time? Because I don't have an ego in that stuff, and I don't want an ego. I turn to everybody and I say, you know what? I noticed John did an incredible job doing this. Good job, John. That you had it so tough because I made a mistake in the plan, but you still made it work. Good for you. And then I do the same. I do it with everybody. I do it out of order so no one realizes that I'm actually going to end up pointing out everybody. Because I want people to realize that. And I do it with teens constantly. Even teens who they're lackluster. I mean, they just don't want to do it. I just turn and say, I know this wasn't your favorite thing to do today, Lois, but you know what? You did this really amazing thing, and I am proud of you for it. And I don't care if she really thinks it, but at least I made her feel good, and I made her feel like she was part of it because she did do the good thing. There's nobody that does universally bad things. Everybody is working and doing the best they can, but the language I use is, what did we do well? What do we have to work on? And those are the things, those are the questions and debriefings that will give you amazing communication versus the doom and gloom stuff that gets people depressed and totally disempowered.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so parents are listening. This is the first time they've ever heard anything like this. And honestly, coming from you, it's actually the first time I've ever had it put this way. And it's so enlightening and empowering and impactful. I'm just like pumped right now.
Nice.
But parents are listening. They're going, okay, first time I've ever heard this, Patrick, what is the first thing I'm going to do? How am I going to have this conversation with my kid? I know I need this. I know he or she needs this. What are we going to do?
First thing you got to do is, weirdly enough, wait until something happens out in the world that they're aware of. I know that sounds very strange, but wait till that happens. And I'm going to explain why. There's an old German term called Schadenfreude. It's not Schadenfreude. For those of you who don't know what Schadenfreude is, it's essentially taking pleasure in someone else's misfortunes. And that's not what this is. But what it does do is, if there is a flood, like, for example, what happened in June in Texas at the campgrounds, and I do disaster plans for literally, I'm not making this up, thousands of campgrounds. When that disaster occurred in Texas, I went to our campgrounds and I personally went on the webinar with all my customer reps and everyone else. And I said, listen, these are the things that we need to learn from this. We need to learn to make sure we are doing blank, because now they're thinking about it. Now, versus, so let's say if I had the conversation, Cheryl, on Christmas Eve, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care, right? So they only care when that's going on. So here's what I tell parents. Take the momentum, and if the disaster that you are hearing about is particularly bad, that is the best time to do it, to say, even though it's scary, let me show you how to not be. Let me show you how to be in charge of it on your own. And they're not going to remember every little thing, but I'll tell you one thing. If you get them to customize a backpack, in fact, on my YouTube page, I actually have, it's all free. It's 30 videos for 30 days. And I take you from an empty backpack on day 1 to a full backpack on day 30. And every single day I say, fill this, fill that. And I go through the 5 pockets. And then actually on the weekend, I give them little drills to do. So I'll say things like, don't use electricity today. Just don't turn anything on. Don't use anything. Or I'll say things like, don't take an elevator. No elevators, only stairs. And that kind of thing. So I kind of force people to think through, gee, do I have what I need in my backpack if I have to go up and down the stairs in a disaster? Right. This especially is true in New York, where I do a lot of work out there in skyscrapers. I do a lot of skyscraper evacuation drills out there. And I say to them, do you have the shoes to go down 25 stories?
Oh my God. Yeah.
You're right.
Oh my God.
So do that with your kids. If something huge happens, hurricane season tends to be a time when things are going on. Here's the other thing. when you have something that is distressing to them that may not be directly disaster related, whether it's something going on with what's currently going on in the Middle East, or something that's going on, some other geopolitical problem that is clearly distressing them, or even weirdly enough, if something happens to a classmate, which does happen. For example, when I was in college or when I was in high school, our track star was killed in Germany. He was killed in the Autobahn. And he was like third in the state. He was an unbelievable athlete. And we came back one summer, and we had discovered when we came back in the fall, he'd been killed in Germany in the Autobahn. And so it was one of those things where you're shocked. You couldn't believe. I mean, you don't, because you think you're going to live forever. When you're a teenager, you think you're immortal. You do. And that's the time when they feel the most disempowered. That's the time to tell them, you are empowered, and let me show you how.
Oh, so good. Okay, everything's good. I think we could sit here for another 5 hours, but maybe we have to do a sequel. Anyway, tell everybody. It's all going in the show notes, but please, Patrick, tell people where to find. I know they're listening going, how do I find this guy? How do I find him? So how to work with you, how to find you, all the good things, Patrick. Please share that with us.
Yes, absolutely. It's disasterpatrick.com. Again, disasterpatrick.com. And I have a YouTube channel, which is going live in just a few days. So we're really excited about it. So we just put up those 30 videos, and now we've got a ton of other videos going up. I'm basically every month, I'm taking on the most difficult disaster challenges anywhere in the world. So I did the one about the cats. That video will be coming up in May. I broke a Guinness World Record. I did CPR nonstop for 28 straight hours. So that one will be going up. But there's one, Cheryl, I want to share with everybody that I'm super excited about. And I actually am going to invite everyone who hears this to reach out to me. September is National Preparedness Month in the US. And I am doing an incredible challenge. I am building the world's first FEMA-rated hurricane shelter, which I built entirely out of Lego bricks. Actually, I should say, am building out of Lego bricks. And I'm traveling to schools around the country, and I'm going to give each student a little piece of the wall to build. Each one is going to build a little bit of the wall, and they can sign their name on it. And we're going to build it. I'm going to drive from California all the way to Maryland, because in Maryland, I'm going to the University of Maryland's famous Glen Wind Tunnel, and it will be subjected to 200-mile-per-hour winds. And it's going to be an incredible undertaking. I have a great sponsor. It's going to be something that is going to reimagine how we do it, because I want to show kids, and I want to show those who feel like they are unempowered, I can make you empowered, and let me show you how. And so that's why this is going to be so much fun. So if you would like me to come to your child's school, it doesn't have to be, it could be elementary school. Everybody loves Legos. Junior high, high school, I will come in and I will do an age-appropriate presentation for them, and even a little drill at the end. And as I said, they can each build a little part of the wall. It would be so much fun. I would love to come out. We give them little bags of Legos and actually show them point by point how to build it. And then we go through and we check it, and then they actually will install it on the wall after they've signed it and things. So it's going to be an amazing experience, but that's something I want to do in talking with parents. So if you're interested, go on my website, go ahead and leave me a message there, and I will be more than happy to talk to you about coming out to your school, because as I said, I will be traveling from the end of August all the way until October 5th. So I'll be traveling one way. I'll be going through the north, and then I'll be coming back through the south. So it's just going to be an incredible experience, so much fun. But the point is to take these lessons we've talked about today, Cheryl, and really bring them to life for people. So I'm so glad to be here. So again, everybody, disasterpatrick.com. Please leave me a message on there, and I would love to be able to connect with you. But I've really enjoyed our conversation today. So thank you so much for having me, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you. Before we go, I have to ask, is there anything I did not ask that you would really like to lay down here?
This is a lesson that I tell every single person, whether I deliver a keynote, whether I do a YouTube video, whether I speak to a school, whether I'm doing a podcast, doesn't matter. When I'm even on the news, I'm on the news quite a bit. Whenever I do that, I always end with this. And I want every single person who is listening to this to remember don't think about hurricanes and backpacks and plans and fire drills and stuff. In the end, this is what it all boils down to. Prepare for a disaster and you'll never experience one.
Oh, mic drop. That was amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. I have learned so much. It's insane. So grateful to have you here. Thank you again for listening to Parenting Teens Advice Redefined. One of the most exciting conversations I've had for sure. We'll see you next time. Before you go, I really want you to know something. I'm not just a podcaster. I'm a speaker, a published author, and the founder of Insight to Impact. I'm an educational strategist and family advocate with over 25 years of experience helping families and schools support teenagers from diagnosis to IEPs, to interpreting assessments, to high school transitions, and beyond. This podcast, Parenting Teens Advice Redefined for Today's World, is part of my mission to help parents understand schools, support their teens, and feel heard and seen at the table. If today's episode helped you, please subscribe or follow the show, share it with another parent, and leave a review. It truly helps families find the support, and I'm very grateful when you do these things. And if your teen is struggling in school, navigating a new diagnosis, or you need help preparing support at school, you can work with me directly through educational consulting or my 90-day advocacy program. Just visit CherylPankers.com to learn more and to book a complimentary consultation to see if I can help. I know parenting is frickin' hard, but if you're listening to podcasts, if you're reading the books, if you're looking for answers, you are not failing because you're still trying. You do not have to figure this out alone. I got you, and we'll see you next week.